Hello folks, here's a Tales from the Village Green that's like none other you've ever seen before. This lovely looking bunting adorns the streets of Ashbourne, a town in the Derbyshire Dales, second only to Matlock in terms of size. There's plenty of history here, and on any normal day it's a bustling, thriving little market town. But this day was nothing like normal. Shops were boarded up, windows were barricaded, and by 1 o'clock it resembled a ghost town in some areas. So what's going on? The answer is a traditional event, one that attracts several thousand people to Ashbourne on Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday every single year. It's so big, even extra buses are laid on to bring people to it. The event is the Royal Shrovetide football match, but if you come to watch it, forget everything you know about football and think more along the lines of rugby. The game starts here at a plinth in Shawscroft car park. This is where the ball is thrown into a huge mass of people by either a local dignitary, a legend of the game, or even a member of the royal family. The game, which can only be played by the locals, sees two teams battle it out to get the ball to one of two goals. It's been played here since at least 1683. The two teams are called the Uppards and the Downards, and which team you belong to depends on which side of Henmore Brook, Ashbourne's river, you were born. Throwing the ball into the crowd is called turning up, and twice the person with that honour has been a Prince of Wales. In 1928 it was the future King Edward VIII, and in 2003 it was the man who is now our very own King Charles III. There are very few rules, and the whole town is the pitch, barring certain no-go zones which are outlined before the match begins. And this is a Shrovetide ball on display in the window of one of the shops on Church Street. You'll note it's much bigger than a normal football and shaped slightly differently. A Shrovetide ball is made of leather and filled with Portuguese cork so that it can float in water. They're hand decorated and must always include both the royal crown and the Union flag. As a visitor, that's as close as you'll get to a Shrovetide ball. Once it's in play, the ball becomes really hard to see because a scrum forms around it called the hug. On the edge of the town is a sculpture by Neil Hawksworth which depicts the hug. So what's it like to actually attend Shrovetide? Let's find out. So here we are back at Shawscroft car park. It's about 1:15 here. As you can see, the crowd is beginning to gather, but it's nothing like what it will be in just 30 minutes time. As more bodies start to populate the car park, you can feel the tension in the air. Some supporters of both the Uppards and the Downards are easily recognisable as they wear hoodies or t-shirts proudly showing their allegiance. Visitors are welcomed, but only the locals are allowed to play the game.
And areas of play. A park and ride scheme has been set up for drivers on the industrial estate at the top of Derby Hill. Please use it. Listen to advice from the marshals. The marshals have your safety, the protection of property, and the continuation of the game as their priorities. Please respect them. Remember, you play the game at your own risk. The Ashbourne Royal Shrovetide Football Committee hope you have an enjoyable day. Respect our Ashbourne Shrovetide game, and it will continue. Abuse the privilege, and the game is lost forever.
After a series of announcements over the tannoy, the crowd start to make their way towards the plinth for the pre-game ceremony. We followed suit, but finding a good space to see everything isn't easy. The game has two balls, one for each day of play. They're delivered to the plinth through the crowd, where they're then thrown into the sea of people below. The act of throwing the ball is known as turning up. That's what our current king, Charles III, did in 2003 when he was the Prince of Wales. The game starts at 2 p.m. on each day and ends at 10 p.m. unless a goal is scored after 6 p.m. If that happens, play ends for the day. If a goal is scored, the person who scores, or goals the ball, is allowed to keep it. If no goal is scored though, the turner-up retains it. The goals are 3 miles apart. One is in Clifton, the other is in Sturston. They were originally mill wheels. Today, with the mills demolished, the goals are represented with purpose-built stones, upon which the ball must be touched 3 times for it to be goaled. The whole town is the pitch, but there are some areas that are out of bounds. Before the game can begin, everyone is reminded of the parts of Ashbourne which are no-go zones.
Wherever they might think, please can you move them as soon as possible Safe places, use the park and ride or wherever. Please. Areas of no play. All churchyards, the Kingdom Hall, and all places of worship.
Lastly, before the game starts, two songs are sung, Auld Lang Syne and God Save the King.
Be forgot for the sake of Auld Lang Syne. For Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup of partnership for the sake of Auld Lang Syne. God save our gracious King, long live our noble King, God save our King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us, God save the King.
With the ball now in play, a rugby-like scrum forms, known as the hug, as members of both teams fight for possession. Unlike normal football, the teams are trying to get the ball to their own goals. The Upwards want it to go to Sturston, and the Downwards' destination is Clifton.
Just there.
It's not long before the hug starts to move, and it moves fast. You have to move quickly if it comes your way. Quite often the hug gets stuck. Here close to Boots, it was a good few minutes before it moved again, this time towards the river. Although knowing the geography of the town isn't essential, it's helpful. If you have an idea of where the ball is, you can move to a decent vantage point. Quite often, though, the hug is out of sight. Away from the hug, you'll often see runners, legging it like their life depends on it in the direction of the ball's movement. What they're doing is waiting for the ball to break away from the hug so they can catch it and make progress. Although you can't always tell where the hug is, sometimes it's obvious. Humans tend to sweat quite a lot when they move in packs, so you'll often see a plume of steam rising from the hug's centre. Apart from the restricted areas mentioned before, the whole town is the pitch. That includes Henmore Brook, where the ball often ends up. It's filled with Portuguese cork, purposely, because that enables it to float. The ball did indeed find its way to the water early on in this edition. In fact, the hug got stuck for quite a while under the bridge on Dig Street. Wherever the hug goes, though, the crowd is sure to follow. When it did eventually break, the ball made its way back to the car park where it started like lightning, prompting a mass exodus away from the bridge and over to Ashbourne Park. Here it got stuck again, and again in Henmore Brook. This time though it went under the culvert that runs under Park Road and Shawscroft car park. I'm sure only a few hardy souls have ever dared venture into there. Getting wet though is guaranteed to be part of the game. Both the goals at Sturston and Clifton face Henmore Brook. That means to score, a player has to stand in the river. There can be no alternative. In recent times, the Uppards have had the better results. Despite a spirited effort by the Downards to reverse a 1-0 deficit from Shrove Tuesday this year, the second goal came within the last hour and a half of play on Ash Wednesday, meaning once again the Uppards took the spoils 2-0. This is one of those historical traditions that make England such an interesting place. Long may the Ashbourne Royal Shrovetide football match continue.